channel. I'm so glad you stopped by today because today we are going to be making something just kind of cute and tiny. Today we are going to be making a platypus. I thought this would be a lot of fun, plus I realized I never made one before, so why not do it? Anyways, let's get started. Okay guys, so I decided to go kind of small with this piece and kind of keep it a little bit more basic. So the design for everything is pretty basic. I left everything as simple as I could, and we're just going to make this look really cute. So I'm starting on the clay head first. I have a lump of tin foil on a glass container. I have the very front of this piece of tin foil kind of flattened to make the shape of the bill, and we're just going to cover this completely in clay. So I'm just wrapping my clay around the tin foil, and then once I have everything on, I'm going to start blending it together and getting a basic shape to work with. Now I am going to be furring the face for this piece, so what I need to do is I need to focus mainly on the key features, so the bill and the eyes. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to kind of outline the shape of the bill and make a nice indent. That way when we add the fur, there's a pretty decent line between where the bill starts and the fur starts. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm also going to use my tools to draw out where the bill is going to open. So I'm going to do a basic sketch, and then I'm going to refine that with my tools and make sure that it's nice and straight and even. Next, I'm going to make some nostrils on the very top of the bill, and then I'm going to move on to making the eyes. I'm not going to be using glass eyes for this. I'm going to leave it really simple, and I'm just going to take some balls of clay and use those for the eyes. So I'm going to lay those out where I want them and then take strips of clay to frame around it to make the eyelids. And then I'm just going to use my tools to refine the shape and blend everything together. Lastly, I'm going to add a little bit of texture to the bill so that it's not super smooth. I want to have a little bit of a bumpiness to it. And then once I like how my face looks, I'm going to put this in the oven at 275 Fahrenheit for probably about 35 to 45 minutes. While that's baking, I'm going to start working on the webbed feet. So for the feet, I'm also going to keep those very simple as well, and I'm not going to be making a wire frame. I'm basically just going to start off with a piece of wire that we can use to hold on to while we're sculpting our foot, and I'm going to put a ball of clay on the top of that. Then I'm going to take some pieces of wire that are cut for the size of the toes that I need, and I'm going to put those into the ball of clay, positioning those where I want the toes to be. Then we're going to do a pre-bake for about 15 minutes at our normal 275 Fahrenheit. Once those are out of the oven and have cooled to touch, we can then add some claws to the very tips of all the wires. So I'm just going to take a little ball of clay, I'm going to put it at the end of each wire, and then I'm going to use my fingers to pinch it into a point. After that, I'm going to do another pre-bake to save our progress so we don't have to worry about bumping the claws, and I'm going to do that for another 15 minutes. Now we're going to make the webbings for the feet. So basically I'm going to take what we have currently for the foot, I'm going to lay it down on top of a rolled out piece of clay, I'm going to trace around that, and then we're going to cut that out and lay it on our wire frame. When placing the webbing, I'm going to be putting this on the top of the foot instead of the bottom. So I'm just laying it out on the top of the wire frame. I'm going to do this to all of our feet, I'm going to blend everything together, and then I'm going to do another pre-bake, this time just a little bit longer for about 20 minutes. Once that's out of the oven and is cooled to touch, we can start working on the paw pads on the bottoms of the feet. So I'm just going to roll out a bunch of little balls of clay, and we're going to position these where the toes are, just to cover up the rest of the wire frame and to shape the toes. Once I have everything positioned, I'm going to use my tools to clean up the lines, and then we can put all of our feet in the oven for about 45 minutes at 275 Fahrenheit. And then once all of our clay pieces have finished baking, we can start painting them. Now even though we are going to be doing a lot of furring to the face and the tops of the feet, we're still going to paint them, that way the white clay doesn't peek through. So I'm going to start by primering the clay face first, and then we'll move on to the feet. So I'm going to be primering the bill a dark brown color, and then I'm going to use a lighter brown to primer the face. With this color, I'm really not trying to match the fur fabric that I'm going to use for it, I'm just getting a basic brown to start with. I'll adjust it a little bit, but it really doesn't matter too much, it's just to keep white clay from peeking through when we add the fur. After that's dried, we can go over and add our details. So I'm going to start with a black, and I'm going to go over the eyes, and then I'm also going to darken some portions of the bill. And And then just to make a few features stand out a little bit, I'm going to add a bit of a white highlight around the eyes and the nostrils, and maybe a little bit around the mouth opening on the bill. And then moving on to painting the feet, I'm going to be primering them the dark color that we used for the bill. I'm not going to be primering half of it one color and half of it the other like we did with the face, mainly because it's a very small piece and I didn't want to mess with it. So I'm going to get all of that primered, and then we can start adding some colors to the paw pads. So for the paw pads, I'm mainly just kind of adding a bit of a more burgundy, almost pink color. I wanted it to be kind of warmer in tone, so I didn't go super pink with it. So I'm just going to go over the paw pads really lightly because I want it to blend from the brown to the burgundy. I don't want any really defined lines with it. So I'm going to get all my feet painted, and then once all my clay pieces are painted and dried, I'm going to mix up some resin to apply over the details. So the parts of the face and the feet that we're going to end up furring, we're not going to be resining them, we're just going to resin everything else. And the main reason for this, I find that the resin makes it a little bit difficult to lay out the fur. So those are going to have to cure overnight, so we're going to start on the sewing, and then once those are done, we can start putting our platypus together. Okay, so this is the pattern that I'm going to use to make the platypus's body. I've left it extremely simple. We have a main body piece, which is going to be a top and a bottom. And then I have two little pattern pieces for the legs. The back ones are just a little bit chunkier. So I'm going to use this and get all my fabric cut out, and we're going to start sewing. For the sewing, I'm going to start with the body pieces, the top and bottom. I'm going to sandwich them together, and we're only going to be sewing the tail. Now I'm going to go over to the pieces for the legs. Each one has a top and bottom as well, and we're going to be sewing them together on the front portion. So we're just sewing down the fronts of all the legs. Now at this point, you'll want to have your clay pieces ready because we're going to start putting it together. Now even though this piece is very small, I am going to be using a wire frame. I left it very simple, but honestly the body shape works really well if you don't want to use a wire frame and you want to keep the body just plush and floppy. So I'm going to be taking our clay head and I'm going to be gluing it to the wire for the neck on the wire frame. Now I'm going to be putting the body together a little bit differently. Normally what I would do is just glue the head into place and have the wire frame with the legs sticking out and everything, but I'm going to add the fabric for the legs first. So I'm going to start with the back legs and I'm going to sew them into place on one side of the body. And then I'm also going to figure out where I want the front legs to go and sew those onto the same side of the body. After those are sewn into place, we're then going to add the wire frame to the body. So I'm just going to slide it into place, making sure that the wire for the tail went into the part for the tail. And then I'm going to be taking the fabric for one side of the body and gluing it to the top of the head. So I'm gluing that into place and letting that dry. Now I'm going to take the wires for the legs and we're going to add the clay legs to them. So I had the wires a little bit longer than I needed, so I'm just going to bend them to make them a little shorter, and then I'm going to take the clay legs and wrap them into place with a thinner gauge wire. I'm then going to take the fabric for the legs and I'm going to start gluing them around the bases of the feet. We're going to let that dry a little bit and then we're going to sew up the backs of all the legs. Now we're going to take the belly piece and we're going to start sewing and closing up the body. While we're doing this, we are going to be stuffing it, and then once we get to the clay head, we're going to glue the fabric into place like we did with the top of the body. So I'm going to let my glue dry for a little bit, that way nothing slides out of place, and then I'm going to lightly shave the legs of our platypus, and maybe a little bit of his sides. And then after that, we're going to take our fur trimmings. I made some very short ones. We're not using the long ones from shaving the body. These are made differently, and I'm going to start gluing them onto the face and tops of the feet. So I'm just taking my fabric glue and I'm applying it where I want the fur to stick, and then I'm just going to sprinkle and push in the fur trimmings where I want the fur. I'll use my tools to move it around to make sure that it's not all clumped in one spot and it looks nice and flat. So I'm going to do this to the face and all four of the feet, and then once it's dried, I'm just going to brush away any excess fur that didn't stick to the glue.
Okay guys, and that's how I made a platypus. I had a lot of fun with this project, and I also realized if you changed up a few things with this tutorial, you could probably make a Niffler from Fantastic Beasts. Anyways, I'm going to have him along with a bunch of other creatures in my Etsy shop, so if you want to buy anything, check the links down below. I should have a few of them still on sale too. Anyways guys, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, all that fun stuff, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!